Like the release from suffering, it just feels incredible. I think Shi and Yang said if you can have a choice between being the most famous rock star, adored by millions, or the most powerful athlete in the world, the richest CEO, being the president, or the most creative writer or athlete for the rest of your life, versus just one day of this, no brainer, he'll pick this. I can totally agree with that.
Same.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Now, if you can just experience one moment of this peace, joy, and freedom, you wouldn't give a fuck about trying to figure anything out. You can still figure things out, on the conventional level. You can still want to be a good artist, writers, or want to, do good things in the world. But once you're completely whole, all those things just become icing on the cake. That's why I always say you can have your cake and eat it too. Infinity includes all relatives. Actually, at the end, the relative would destroy the absolute, and the absolute would destroy the relative.
I spent most of my married life right here.
Are you still married?
My husband passed away 2 years ago.
I'm sorry. So this video is a guide to work with emotions through various contemplative fitness tools. How to deal with anger, fear, shame, and jealousy. The source of all dissatisfaction. How reactions and triggers arise. What exactly and where exactly are emotions. The importance of understanding karma, cause and effect, spiritual bypassing, and how non-duality and spirituality itself can suppress your feels. Shadow work and the neuroscience of letting go. Very juicy stuff, brah.
Can you also introduce to the guys the two dot?
The Buddha talked about two darts of experience. The first dart is pure sensations. It's just hidden consciousness, and it's going on all the time. As long as we're organisms and we're biological, have the body, mind, and the mind, it's going on all the time. The first dart is constantly, being hit all the time through the senses. But the second dart is the reaction to the first dart. That's why they say pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. There's only 3 ways you can react to a sensory context: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Now, without that reaction, there's no craving, there's no suffering. Now, what you want to do is find that gap and then abide there. Now, it's going to be a little uncomfortable there at first because you're going to feel the push and pull between pleasant sensation, unpleasant sensations, desire and aversion, right? Now, the more you practice abiding in the gap between the first and the second dart, the more that the second dart is going to get evaporated. Now, ultimately, there's no gap at all, but that's when you remove all the reactions. Now, if you want to take this a step further, you can do self-inquiry from the space between the first and the second dart by asking the question, who or what is the self that needs to react? And ultimately, you see that there's no reactor to any situations. See, the ego is not an entity. It's just a second dart of experiences that's added on top of the first dart. You're resisting the flow of sensation, either conceptualizing it, claiming ownership over it, sort of the mental contraction around just the pure physical sensation of life.
Or like, this person isn't like this because they did this, and you started to slap a lot of labels on top of that.
So the seer, hearer, doer, thinker is the second dart phenomena. Even just seeing out of the world and then labeling it as sky, bird, or hearing the bird chirping, you have a mental image and a label bird. That's already a very subtle second dart experience. Most people have never actually experienced the world as it is. They're just experiencing the world through thoughts and concepts. I'm not saying concepts are bad. You can actually experience and utilize concepts as if they're the first start of experience, but not verifying them or referring them back to a thinker. Suffering is pain times resistance, or you can even say suffering is pleasure times resistance. Because pleasure and pain are just two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. They codependent arise. That's why in the full united state, it goes beyond even samsara and nirvana. So all spiritual practice is really just about thinning out the second dart. Do nothing meditation, where you just let everything be the way it is without trying to interfere with anything, you try to judge anything. All the quote-unquote second dart becomes first dart. And if everything is the first dart, you can say there are no darts at all, because all sensations are empty and self-liberating. And without the mental contraction over the pure sensation of pain, the pain can be more vibrant, so to speak. You can just watch the bubbles of pain dissipate, rising and passing. But at the same time, it's also easier to stay with it. I feel everything more intensively, but at the same time, I feel nothing. Hi. And that's one of the paradoxes with realization. This is an amazing shot. See, without the observer or the feeler, perception becomes more panoramic, luminous, and HD. Sometimes when you resist and contract a feeling or sensation, you're actually just numbing it. And by suppressing them, they never get healed or released. The selfing mechanism is totally a second dart phenomenon. A lot of times we think a lot. We get lost in the head only because subconsciously or even consciously, we don't want to feel. It's a form of avoidance. You don't want to look at your feelings or feel them as they are and accept them unconditionally, provide quote unquote self-love or self-compassion metta to them. There's tensions in the body mind because you don't let things be the way they are. If you let those contractions be the way they are, they'll be released and dissolved into infinite space, because nature is always unfolding through the course of the least resistance. And if there's resistance, you don't resist that. You just provide space for them. If I have to describe what dissatisfaction means in one sentence, it's just wishing things to be different than what it's going on right now. That's all there is to it. And there's absolutely no other version of reality other than what's going on right now. Everything else is just thought. Everything else is just mental imagery that you're attaching to the present moment sensation and say things can be any other way, but you can't. But even those thoughts are just what's happening by itself, so you just let them be there. Every time we have like a reaction, or we feel like negative emotions or even positive emotions or any sense of identification, is body sensations contracting with a thought, coupled with a thought. So there's a feedback loop that reinforces each other. It's a body contraction and then thoughts about that contraction, either stories or narratives, concepts, like this, I don't like this. And that feeds the body sensation and reinforces it, making it more solidified. And the solidification gives the mind more stories to chew on. It goes on and on and on. So you just gotta, break the loop. The first thing you do is take them apart. But thoughts are a little bit more tricky to take apart. The easier way to do is just to leave the thought alone and just bring your attention to the body sensation and feel them completely and directly, and see that the only way out is through. Because that's what the emotions are, really. Because apart from the fluctuating sensations of the body that are just constantly shape-shifting, and the constant shape-shifting of the sensation that you call thoughts, there's no such thing as guilt, anger, shame, or fear, anything like that. Those are just labels. Just like the label of a hand or fingers can never contain the raw data that makes up your quote-unquote fingers and quote-unquote hands. In fact, at the microscopic level of just energy vibrating at the speed of light, there are no fingers or hands or any kind of emotion like anger, guilt, shame, or fear. So emotions are completely neutral and innocent. They're just thoughts that labels emotions as positive and negative.
So what are emotions? Emotions are physical sensations times thought and beliefs about the sensations. See, the Buddha never made a distinction between emotions and thoughts. They are both impersonal sensations, no different from sight, sound, smell, taste, or the weather. This means that the so-called self, or any of the emotions it experiences, cannot be found, located, or pinned down, just as the word weather cannot be located as something inherently, independently, and unchangingly existing apart from the ever-changing phenomena of clouds, lightning, wind, rain. There are no nouns in reality, only verbs. Some verbs are simply moving slower than others. There are no separate verbs either, just one movement of unfoldment. Once body sensations and their labels and stories are taken apart, it is clearly seen that they have nothing to do with one another, other than more labels and stories you tell yourself. Don't believe your thoughts, and don't believe your feelings. There is not a single thought or feeling that has an intrinsic meaning, nor do they point to anything in reality. Thoughts seem real and convincing because of other thoughts and feelings. Everything you believe to be true is a house of cards, of thoughts about thoughts about thoughts, feelings about feelings about feelings, or the combination of thoughts and feelings that are bundled up together to reinforce a feedback loop of feelings pointing to thoughts and thoughts pointing to feelings. This is how the selfing mechanism is created. You are selfing to your own selfing mechanism. And every time you're triggered, you're reacting to your own reactivity. You can put an end to this mental proliferation before it spirals out of hand by unhooking the dependent arising process of sensations. All that is happening when you feel contracted or wishing reality to be different than what is already happening is a cluster of sensation, hijacking, clinging, grasping, or claiming ownership to other clusters of sensations. This is due to ignorance about the nature of sensations. Sensations can never look at, be aware of, or know other clusters of sensations. All sensations are self-luminous, self-cognizing, and self-liberating. This is why the arrow of attention is an illusion. You can never witness a thought. The thought you think you're witnessing already disappeared. Witnessing a thought is just an image of you watching a thought, which is just another thought that is self-cognizing. Even the passage of time is an illusion created by a cluster of sensations you label as the past, which is happening right now, grasping onto another cluster of sensations you label the future, which is happening right now. And where is this now? You can't locate it either in the midst of this ever-flowing flux. So how do you untangle solidified sensations? By letting things be the way they are, and all sensations will be self-liberated into vast spaciousness. And when you let go the direction of attention from the subject to the object, both disappear. Craving and aversion is relinquished. This is the do-nothing meditation. Or one can penetrate the solidity by dissolving sensations into emptiness. This is vipassana. Or apply tantra. Instead of relinquishing the energy, you work with it by transmuting it from negative to positive. Or apply metta by giving them unconditional love and compassion. Or apply self-inquiry by looking for the one who is feeling and thinking, and see clearly that you've never actually thought a thought or felt a feeling. There is no one there to think thoughts, and no one there to feel the feelings. It might seem like you are thinking thoughts or feeling feelings, but all that's happening is the movement of grasping. But even that's an illusion, as air cannot grasp air. There is nothing to grasp, and no one here to do the grasping. There is nothing to let go of, and no one here to be let go of. Or one can contemplate dependent origination. What you are is the intersection of infinite webs on infinite webs of causes and conditioning of the universe. This intersection, or any contractions in experience, is also a process that generates more streams of dependent arising process interacting. Ultimately, all the tools in your contemplative CrossFit toolbox will merge as one.
See, at the lower order of experience, at the level of pure sensation, just sensory data, right? The only reason why we feel like we're grasping onto another version of reality to exist is because certain sensations, certain cluster of sensations is trying to grasp onto and claim ownership to other cluster of sensations. Higher order sensations that gives rise to the feeling of like aversion, annoyance, anger, ill will, irritation, or annoyance are actually diversions. Right? They're distractions to divert you from investigating, feeling, and embracing the quote-unquote lower order sensations in the body that somehow feels icky. So you create an alternate version of reality, sort of this alternate universe that seems to be more desirable than whatever's already happening right now in your body. You know, I'm annoyed and resentful because X and Y things should happen, or would have happened, or could have happened. X and Y person should be this way, would have been this way, could have been this way. So again, the simplest and most optimal and direct way that you can do to deal with negative emotions is to detach the labels of the physical sensation of the body and just provide unconditional love and space for the sensations. Just stay with the body. Don't push anything away because nothing needs to be any different. Complete openness to the field. Feel them with curiosity and interest. Breathe into it with loving kindness and hold it like an innocent child. Really allow the body to feel. Right? There are no stories in the sensations. In this moment, whatever you're reacting to, it's already gone. There's absolutely no connection between these sensations and the scenarios that your mind's creating that thinks is causing the triggering. It's always about some traumas and some needs within oneself that hasn't been met, never been held, never been allowed to express. So it comes out sideways and manifests in diversion. And every time you divert yourself from feeling the body, you bypass, and then traumas never get resolved. And one of those diversions is blame. You're blaming other people for how you feel in the body. What the fuck? So you gotta be brutally and directly honest with yourself by admitting that whatever you're feeling has nothing to do with other people or other events. It's always about you. Deep kindness towards oneself. And this takes courage, right? Welcome anything. And it's very easy to bypass with non-duality because they're like, oh, there's no time, there's no space. Yeah, on the absolute level, that's correct. But the absolute is also the relative. So karma's cause and effect and your actions still have their merits. So be kind towards other people and to yourself, because everything's interconnected. And then you're like, I thought you said there were no self nor others. I never said there was no self nor others. Neither did I say that there was. Find the middle way. Go beyond existence and non-existence. Everything exists simultaneously. Cause and effect happen simultaneously. One metaphor is the block universe, Einstein's theories of relativity, where everything exists in this bread loaf of space-time fabric, where everything that ever existed, whatever exists or exists right now, is all contained in it. Can you say that there's cause and effect and time in there? You can't say that those things exist. Neither can you say that they don't exist. Say that there's no time and space is actually just the other side of the same coin, as saying all time and all space exists within the same singularity. See, everything you experience is through the 5 sense doors, right? Everything is your projection. So we can never perceive reality as it is, right? So just perception itself is a kind of a conditioning. Like if you look at the 12 links of dependent origination, there's all those links that have to come together for the perception to happen. That's why I say even pure awareness is conditional, right? The awareness is dependent upon the object of awareness. So there's actually no such thing as like a objective consciousness. See, one of the reasons why I emphasize on not attaching your identity to awareness or consciousness is because, non-dual awareness is almost like a double-sided sword. It can suppress your emotions, actually, because people who are still identifying with awareness, or they're just projecting themselves onto the awareness, they can actually hide behind the warm blanket of awareness and then spiritual bypass. That's why a lot of people, they say, oh, I'm in non-duality, but they're still getting triggered. Or a lot of gurus, oh, I'm in God mind, but then they're still abusing their students. Wake up, clean up, grow up, right? But a lot of people, they're stuck in the awakening part. They're getting high off their awakening or their roles as the gurus, and they never get checked from their closed containers of this echo chamber of, oh, spiritual God. There's a lot of teachers out there that are really loving and kind, and everything's perfect when the camera is on, when they're giving a talk. But privately, it's reported that they get triggered very easily. And one theory that I have is because they've been suppressing. They've been spiritual bypassing with there's no I, there's no one here to feel. They go straight to the transcendental. But you still have those traumas that's never been met. You still have a me too. You gotta look at it and see how much identification there is to non-identification. The only way to transcend your humanity is to embrace your humanity fully. Right? The boundlessness and the vastness of non-dual awareness can be so broad and so spacious that like the tiny little me too sensations can be overlooked and ignored. When you're 99% suffering free, when you're 99% vast spaciousness, that 1% that's suppressed, when it surfaces, when it gets triggered, you could be like 99%. And that's very dangerous.
Keep going.
Now as you continue to mature and deepen, when you reach an even deeper stages of realization, when you let go of even non-duality, when you see through how this all-pervasive consciousness, this eternal awareness, is just part of the cosmic conditioning, that it's not the source of experience, then the self has nowhere to hide. You can't hide behind spirituality anymore. At that point, you have no choice but to clean up. You have no choice but to work on your issues. I remember when I first started to deconstruct spirituality and letting go of my identification to absolute reality, huge chunks of past trauma surfaces. Instead of no self your way out of them, I had to work with the content, aka shadow work. Figure out why these emotions arise in the first place. Why are you keep getting frustrated because of X and Y? Anger and frustration or any kind of triggers and reactions are there to protect you, or as I said earlier, to divert you from feeling what's underneath. So these emotions are completely innocent in and of themselves. They're just trying to protect you. So whenever negative emotions come up, other than just feeling into it, have a dialogue with them. Ask them where they came from. And it'll show you their history. And you go back to the times when the exact same triggers occurred for the exact same reasons. And you see that this goes way back, all the way back maybe to your childhood. When was the first time those emotions arise to protect you from feeling X and Y? What's underneath that? What are you protecting?
Every day I wake up in the morning, I feel like shit, you know why? And I'll do anything I can to acquire this consciousness.
For me, it was need to feel special. It was doubt. It was this one thought, I'm not good enough. So I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be loved and feel safe.
Big ball.
And you can give the love and the safety that you need right now. So you keep going deeper into your past memories through visualization and hold your past selves through unconditional acceptance and loving kindness. And you just feel into the sensation of I'm not good enough. And what's underneath that? Nothing. And when your past selves that's hurting all this time got what he wanted, which is to be loved and accepted, it no longer needs protecting. And the anger will be transformed and released. So this is another instant when it's useful for you to switch the view of reality from the non-dual to the dual, even if you realize no self. Now, if you combine this kind of shadow work without spiritual bypassing with spirituality work, like, abiding by spacious awareness or emptying out stuff, vipassana, it's very powerful. Because now that you can really dissect why you're feeling X and Y, why you're getting triggered, and you go underneath and go deeper and deeper and deeper, and just really feel into it, and let the boundless awareness hold them, dissolve them, love them, layer by layer by layer. This is how you bring the shadows to the light. You realize that the shadow and the light are one and the same. And you come full circle to realize that, like I always said, awareness is no different from the content, from the sensations. The unconditioned is no different from the conditioned. So, but then if everything's conditioned, then you don't have more conditioning around the conditioning. The Buddhists call it like the 2 darts of experience. So all those sensations of the visual apparatus, sound, sight, whatever, they're just the first dart of experience. I see a tree out there, but I don't really see a tree. I just see a projection of a tree and some labels of a tree. Right? You can say this field is just sort of the totality of the brain's projection, but you don't know what it is actually. It's unknowable, yeah. Since there's no difference between like the process of inside and outside, if you can't even perceive what's out there as it is, how are you going to know for sure what you're thinking and what you're feeling? All the second dart stuff, like the selfie mechanism and emotions, are like illusions on top of illusions. And furthermore, how are you going to know what other people are thinking and feeling? So this insight removes like most of the triggers. Because you realize it's just empty luminosity pointing to empty luminosity. Emptiness is not like things don't exist. It's like they lack intrinsic existence. Because once you say that something doesn't exist or there's no thingness, that's already a duality. So what's the middle way? There's a world, but there isn't. If all you have is your own bubble of reality, other people have their own bubble of reality. So there's no ultimate truths, right? There's as many truths as there are brains. There are no opinions or beliefs. Every negative opinion someone says about you, it's always about them. Even the notion that there are no truths is not something that they hang on to. There's not even a knower at the end to know that you don't know anything, right? So another mojo that you can live by is that other people are always right. You want to give people the freedom to be exactly who they are, just like you're going to let your own body sensation be exactly what they are. That's going to take away so much suffering from your life. So the don't know mind is actually the boundless mind. The reason why a lot of people that are really desperate to know everything, that's actually coming from fear. It comes from fear of what? That's something that you have to look into. Usually it's a thought or belief of I'm not good enough, or maybe like just societal, our educational system like make you condition your mind to think that you have to know everything. There's many reasons, but usually due to fear that you really want to know something. But just investigate into that feeling of certainty or feeling of being right. The feeling of being right or feeling of I'm right, other people are wrong. That's a contraction, yeah. So what is the neural mechanism behind, let's say if you want to release trauma, releasing triggers?
Like how we're built, how our conditions are built is basically you have neurons that connects to other neurons that creates this like relationship in your brain. So let's just say I see you, you've heard me before, I see you, and then it triggers another neuron that says that this is danger. And then let's just say it triggers my amygdala, so there's fear. So basically, in this fear causes a certain emotion in my body that is very uncomfortable, and then it causes more thoughts, then more emotions, and more thoughts. This is actually the samsara. So we're programming our brain to just see it as in a way to accept it, and then the path to that neuron weakens. Yeah, do nothing.
When you just do nothing, when you don't resist resistance, the links of the neurons
you
will
just
unpack.
Let it go.
Yeah.
So your neurons will also learn so this is now not the pattern, because the thing is, your body is just a survival system. Your neocortex is just a system to help you survive better. So basically, it's always optimizing on. So it's basically taking your past and what you did in the past, and it's trying to do it for your future, because that's the most effective way. Like it doesn't want to redo something new every time, because that's not effective. So in the end, you're just breaking the pattern that you built when you were a kid. So you see everything, and everything just dissolves. Like there's not much to do. That's all. It's super simple. You don't need sutras. You don't need anything. Just do this. Just keep doing this, and then you'll see you're dissolving super fast.
Another useful way to look at first dot, second dot. We're probably going to talk much more details when we talk about dependent origination. But in the 12 links, they have 3 links that talks about craving, attachment, and habitual tendency. So those are the 3 second dots. So essentially, it's about when you come into contact, there's going to be some sort of quote-unquote craving, meaning I don't want this.
Or I want this, or it doesn't matter, yeah.
Then that's sort of create an attitude towards I want to move towards it, or I want to push it away, I want to avoid it. or I don't want to look at this, I want to numb myself. That's the starting of the second dot, starting of the selfing process.
Yeah.
And then comes the attachment or the clinging or like the storytelling of it. And you started to slap a lot of labels on top of that. And then habitual become a tendency, you would go into your past behavior and choose something that would reinforce an identity. And then you take an action, and then that like solidify it. And the next one, that action will make the next cycle, when the same similar thing happens, much stronger, to the point that people become addicted to things.
That's the wheel of samsara. Yeah. The reason why your emotion feels like it's yours is because you think that somehow emotions are contained within the body, or that thoughts are contained in the head. But that's an illusion. So you can see that the distinction between what's being contained and the object within the container is a very subtle first and a second dot distinction. Now we think like emotion exists within the body, but actually they don't. If you look in your direct experience, you don't exist within the body, because the body is just a cloud of sensations. There's just some free-flowing sensation present. Some of which you call the body, some of which you call the world. If you investigate a little closer, you see that no sensations contain other sensations. Just like we talked about earlier, how no sensation can look at other sensations. A feeling sensation doesn't arise within another feeling sensation. A visual sensation doesn't arise within another visual sensation, or within a sound or a touch sensation. So our idea of the quote-unquote body is fundamentally depend on this kind of a grounding, or putting a sensation to the boxes. Now, in reality, there's no container of sensation. Just like when I said, even awareness, the quote-unquote bubble of awareness is an illusion. Awareness is not a container that sensations are coming in and out of. See, any sense of this containing that is just like the subject-object split. There's a duality there. Whatever we experience as a container is itself just more sensations. We believe that thoughts are literally in our heads and emotions are actually in the body, but these beliefs are just thoughts. So just look for yourself right now. Do thoughts arise within the sensation that we call the quote-unquote head, and our emotion experience is being quote-unquote in the body? The only reason why thoughts, emotions seem like they're in our head or in our body, in our hearts, is because we believe they do. It's just a mental box, just a thought. Thoughts being in the head is actually a pretty Western idea. In a lot of Eastern tradition, thoughts are in the heart, or some Aboriginal society, thoughts are like in the belly. Thoughts seem to be coming from wherever you think they're coming from. So without that mental imagery, thoughts and emotions are completely non-local. And keep in mind, I'm only talking about direct experience, not neurology. So by seeing that nothing is contained in direct experience, we start to lose the ability to believe that we're actually experiencing an object, such as one's body that contains emotions. And this is a gigantic step towards liberation. It's a giant step in liberating the knowing of quote-unquote I am from being object-bound, to instead allow for a limitless consciousness. And instead, we allow the sense of being to expand and encompass the entire field of experiencing. And going beyond even that, you see that even the notion everything is sensations is another ground. But what sensations ultimately are is nothing but their momentary subjective knowing. And knowing is not something. Knowing is all there is to reality as such. So this is the same insight as the thinker is just another thought, and that thoughts cannot think another thought into existence. Nor can you witness thoughts or get lost in thoughts. Witnessing thoughts and getting lost in thoughts is just another thought. There's no one to get lost in thought. Now, when we collapse all sense of this containing that, or distance between this or that, not only are experiences non-local, every sensation is non-arising, non-abiding, and non-ceasing. This is Nirvana. See, the real insight of impermanence is that there is no impermanence. The change and the flux is so rapid and so thoroughgoing that no thing ever actually formed to be impermanent. And here you can say there's no transformation at all, and that there's nothing to dissolve, because the process of dissolution still presupposes time and space. But at the same time, there is a transformation. See, Gautama takes a noun, quote-unquote, the unconditioned, and treats it as a verb. There's no such thing as freedom, per se. There's only freedom from constraints, or freedom to act in ways that were not possible because of these constraints. Nor is there any awakening per se, but only awakening from the quote-unquote sleep of delusion, or awakening to the presence of others who suffer. And there's no such thing as the unconditioned, only the possibility of not being conditioned by something. Nirvana, therefore, does not refer to the attainment of a transcendental, absolute state apart from the conditions of life, but to the possibility of living here and now emancipated from the inclination of desire, hatred, and delusion. No longer would one be the victim of paralyzing habits. One would be free to respond to circumstances in fresh, unimpeded ways.